Welcome to this explainer. Have you ever wondered exactly where you fit on the global wealth ladder? Well, today we're embarking on a really fascinating analytical journey straight up that ladder. We're going to examine the stark realities, the hidden psychology, and the fundamental shifts in human behavior that happen as a person's net worth scales from absolute zero all the way up to the absolute stratosphere.
It's a question we've all probably pondered at least once, right? What actually changes when you hit $1 billion? Like, does a limitless bank account mean a limitless supply of happiness? Well, what today's explainer is going to reveal is that money doesn't actually eliminate your problems. It merely changes them. As we scale the tiers of wealth today, we're going to see exactly how those problems mutate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Today we'll be covering 5 distinct phases: the paycheck trap, stability in the mass affluent, the millionaire experience, ultra-rich and dynastic wealth, and finally, does money buy happiness? Starting off with part 1, the paycheck trap. We're starting at the very bottom of the financial spectrum, where the focus is purely on daily survival. $10,000. This number right here represents the absolute maximum net worth ceiling for what we're calling Tier 1. In this phase, people are essentially just treading water. If you're sitting anywhere from a negative net worth up to $10,000, you're trapped in a phase completely defined by financial survival. Breaking this down, we see 2 really distinct groups. Tier 0 is in pure survival mode. Their net worth is negative to zero. The daily reality here is a harsh struggle for basic needs, and the mindset is consumed by extreme stress and these vicious debt loops. Then you have Tier 1. They might have a tiny bit in the bank, up to $10,000, but they're living paycheck to paycheck. They're just treading water, and their mindset is entirely dominated by the fear of emergency expenses. It's a daily, relentless battle. The paralyzing fear of a single emergency expense. I want you to really think about what that quote means. I mean, we've all felt that sudden drop in our stomach when the check engine light comes on, right? But at this level on the wealth ladder, life is incredibly fragile. Literally one flat tire, one unexpected medical bill, or just one missed shift at work can completely ruin a life and trigger a catastrophic debt spiral. The stress here isn't just mental, it is physical, it's visceral. Moving on to part 2, stability and the mass affluent. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because what actually happens when you finally break out of that trap? Well, it happens in 2 distinct steps. First, you hit Tier 2, which is financial stability. With $10,000 to $100,000, you finally get some much-needed breathing room. You've got a basic safety net, and you can afford minor luxuries without completely panicking. Then that compounds into step 2, Tier 3, financial security. This goes up to $1 million. This is the mass affluent class. Here, we're looking at homeownership and active investing. The baseline of life is finally secure. But notice how the mindset completely shifts here. A Tier 1 individual is terrified of eviction or starvation. It's a primal fear. But for the Tier 3 individual, that primal fear is gone, and it's almost immediately replaced by a brand new anxiety, low debt panic, and an absolute obsession with protecting the assets they've just built. The stress hasn't vanished, it's just changed its outfit. Let that sink in for just a second. The anxiety shifts from making money to protecting it. This is an absolutely critical psychological pivot on the wealth ladder. You're no longer fighting the world for your basic survival. Instead, you're fighting the market, you're fighting inflation, and you're fighting risk to make sure you don't slide backwards. Which brings us to part 3, the millionaire experience. This is the exact point on the ladder where work fundamentally transforms from a necessity into a choice. It's a massive lifestyle upgrade. Tier 4. Sitting between $1 and $5 million means financial independence. Work becomes optional. The focus shifts entirely over to passive income. Then you ascend into the upper crust of Tier 5, which is between $5 and $30 million. Now we're talking about private wealth management, luxury travel, and entirely new social dynamics. But with these new social dynamics comes a brand new psychological burden. And this brilliantly illustrates that new burden: status games. By definition, status games are the social competition among peers, focusing on luxury, position, and comparison, rather than basic survival. Think about it. When you have $10 million, you aren't worried about buying groceries anymore. You're worried that your neighbor's yacht has a helipad and yours doesn't. For the bottom tiers, the intrinsic motivation to wake up and work is survival. You literally earn to eat. But for multimillionaires, that motivation has completely mutated. They are earning for status. The drive to accumulate more wealth at this stage is almost entirely driven by social comparison and positioning within their elite circles. Now we move to part 4, ultra-rich and dynastic wealth. We are now leaving the everyday millionaires completely behind and entering a highly isolated, almost surreal stratosphere, $1 billion and beyond. It is almost impossible for the human brain to comprehend the sheer scale of this number. When your net worth crosses this threshold, you aren't just participating in the economy anymore. You're actively shaping it. At the very apex of the wealth ladder, we have Tier 6, the centimillionaires, holding $30 to over $100 million. Their reality involves things like private aviation and institutional power. And then we have Tier 7, the billionaires, with dynastic wealth. Their reality involves direct political influence and securing a multi-generational legacy. From an objective standpoint, the concerns of everyday human life have been completely replaced by the management of systemic power and influence. So, the crucial point is, what does this actually do to the human brain? Well, it leads to what psychologists call post-scarcity psychology, when standard financial consequences completely fade away, and you can buy literally anything without even glancing at the price. The fundamental feedback loops of human existence break down. And this leads directly to a staggering loss of regular reality. Deep isolation replaces the daily struggle. Because standard financial consequences no longer apply to you, it becomes incredibly difficult to relate to 99.9% of the human population. The struggle for survival is gone, sure, but it's replaced by an intense existential loneliness. It's the ultimate lonely at the top cliché, but it is entirely backed by data. Finally, part 5, does money buy happiness? So we've climbed from absolute zero to over $1 billion. The big question, does money actually buy happiness? The best way to understand this is through this shifting burden narrative arc. Notice how the time frame of human anxiety expands with wealth. Down at tiers 0 and 1, your anxiety time frame is measured in days. How do I pay rent this week? As you move into tiers 2 through 5, your anxiety time frame expands to years. How do I protect my assets for retirement? And at the absolute highest tiers, tiers 6 and 7, your anxiety time frame expands to generations. How do I protect my legacy long after I'm gone? Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is that the stress never actually disappears. It just changes categories. Down at the bottom, your stress is entirely focused on material survival. In the middle classes, it shifts to wealth protection. And at the absolute top, it transforms into existential isolation and status. The volume of the stress might change slightly, sure, but the presence of stress is a constant human condition, regardless of your bank balance. Which leaves us with this final thought to ponder. If crossing every single financial threshold simply replaces one type of anxiety with another, does money actually buy happiness, or does it just buy a completely different, perhaps more comfortable set of problems? Thank you for joining me on this explainer, and I'll leave you to think about that one.